Good day, everyone. It's CDN Freight Broker Rob coming back to you. It's been a while, and I know it's been a bit, but I've been busy. 2024 has been a very interesting year for the logistics trucking industry. The challenges that the United States had last year with low rates, the capacity of too much carriers and not enough freight. Well, those challenges I've anticipated it, and they've been hit in Canada. And we're seeing those challenges. So I'm no different than anyone else. I've had to work harder, had to dig up those contacts, and I've been busy cold calling. So, but I figured it was time I get back onto creating some content for the channel. And one of the ideas I thought is, as you know, many of you've heard me say before, I like to talk, instead of just say trucking or freight brokering, I like to use the terminology supply chain logistics. So there's a thing called 1PL, 2PL, 3PL, 4PL, and 5-party logistics. And there's different levels of that. And I thought I could sit here and talk about it by myself. It's kind of boring. So instead, I wanted to bring on a special guest who has a lot of knowledge that can help us bring this awareness to it. And his name is Mark Funk, and he is the Director of Carrier Procurement at the freight brokerage SPI Logistics, which coincidentally, I'm an agent at SPI. So many of you didn't know that, but you now know, because I was just this week on another podcast talking about some LTL with Troy Griggs. But today it's a pleasure to have that Mark is giving us some time. And so I'm just going to stop sharing here for a quick second. So I just wanted to introduce Mark. Thank you so much for taking some time here to help us on this topic. So why don't you do a quick introduction about your background and how you got to SPI Logistics?
Yeah, sure, Robert. So thanks, first of all, for having me on. I think it's great that, getting here and getting a chance to speak and just getting out in the industry. So a little bit about me. I've been in logistics for 20 plus years. We'll go all the way back. I used to do some overseas work with some suppliers, and we do some vetting and bringing stuff in. From there, transitioned to a consumer packaged goods company, Sara Lee US Foods. So I was on the actual shipper side, dealing with some of the things and the challenges that we have on there. From there, transitions over to a company called Total Quality Logistics. I did a 10-year stint at Total Quality Logistics, where I was the Director of Carrier Operations. Moved from TQL down to Florida, right? And started with a company down here, Secure Transportation. And then from Secure Transportation, I went to R&L Global Logistics, which is the brokerage truckload division for R&L carriers. And from there, actually, I'm here at SPI Logistics, and I'm really happy to be here. I think SPI Logistics brings a lot to the industry, and it's an agent-based model, which I tend to agree with.
And I think it's underestimated having someone like yourself in a brokerage. Like, obviously, if you're just a one-person freight brokerage, you're wearing all hats. But SPI Logistics is celebrating its 45th year this year. We have agent offices across the United States and Canada. We're top 100. We fall in the top 100, and I think we're on the 85th in the top 100 freight brokerage in North America. So I think it's underestimated that we as agents, when we're focused on trying to book business, building a book of business, and booking the loads for our customers, we have such an awesome team behind the scenes, and that includes yourself. And I think this year, the timing couldn't be more impeccable for you to come on board. And a little side note, last year, Mark and myself and our wives, we had the pleasure of having supper last year. We have an annual get together with SPI Logistics, and we were in Vancouver last year. And I had the pleasure of being able to sit at the same table as Mark, so we got to learn a little bit more about each other. And it was a fantastic evening last year. And but I think, what Mark has done with onboarding Go Highway and many other things, it's been fantastic. And I think you can maybe just touch quickly before we get into the main topic of the importance of having someone like yourself at a freight brokerage.
Well, yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you for the compliments. I'm not sure I can live up to that, but with having the back scene support that you talked about, I think that's key when you're talking about an agent based model, or actually any type of freight brokerage. If you've got your sales team out and they're selling and are doing what they need to do to work with the carriers and the customers, having that back office team for the compliance, dealing with some of the IT opportunities that we would encounter and payables and things like that. I think that's key as you go through that. Yeah.
So to respect your time, we're going to jump into this little presentation, basically talking about first party logistics all the way up to five party logistics. And so here we are. So
Yeah,
basically we
perfect.
got
Okay.
first all the way through, and I'm going to have Mark explain each why companies would choose these models. We're going to touch on how does this impact the company's supply chain, and then most importantly, how this creates an opportunity for freight broker agents.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, the very first one obviously is 1PL. In a situation like that, that's where the shipper is the actual person who does the direct transfer of goods. It's you think of a farmer, right? A farmer's got it, they got the eggs, and then here you go, they're taking it straight to the market. So, smaller scale operations, it's typically one product, maybe two or three products, and they're taking that over. There's really no other party that's involved in that. That's why it's just one party logistics.
And they might just own a cube truck or whatever and deliver it to the
They
local
may,
market.
they may, yeah, box truck maybe, and they deliver it themselves. So it's a smaller type operation, right? So if you go over to a 2PL, now what a 2PL is that's where the manufacturer or the shipper. When I say manufacturer and shipper, a lot of times during the course of this process, they're synonymous. Okay, so the manufacturer shipper, what they're doing is they're reaching out and they're hiring a carrier. A carrier. That's the second party logistics part of it. And what they're doing is they're picking up that product at the shipping location or wherever they're manufacturing from, and then they're delivering it to the market, to the distribution center, wherever that may be. And think of in this sense that it's highly transactional, right? They're not looking at that transportation provider is not looking at anything to do really with that manufacturer's business. They're just picking up the freight, dropping it off, and they're on to the next, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's exactly. And so what I've done is, so as we go through, I kind of highlighted each of the structures with transportation in yellow, just to pinpoint where trucking and freight brokering falls into it. And there's the odd occasion where the manufacturer in the early stages, sometimes they will get one or two trucks themselves and deliver direct to the market themselves, but generally it's more cost effective for them to have outside carriers.
Sure, absolutely. And then what happens is you get into this space of 3PL, right? And when you think about a 3PL, obviously you've got the large players in the market. You've got the CH Robinsons, you got the TQLs, the Echoes, and things like that, right? The SPIs, so all these other entities. But the thing with a third party logistics company, what that is a manufacturer or a shipper has a need to engage external parties to help them move product, right? So the actual concept of a third party logistics, that phrase, that term really came out in the early 70s. And the thing with that is it came out, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, it had something to do, or it was intermodal marketing companies is where it came out, because it originated with intermodal, and then through the 80s it kind of took on a little bit more of a transition with freight brokerages and those types of things. But the thing with the third party logistics, they don't actually accept or take the title of the product. Right, so they're transporting the product from the manufacturer to the warehouse, from the warehouse to the market, right? So a third-party logistics company, when a shipper or manufacturer engages those, one of the things that stands out is that shipper or that manufacturer still has multiple areas of contact, because they may have 4 or 5 different brokers that they deal with. So they're dealing with 4 or 5 different brokers, and sometimes these brokers will get involved slightly with some of the manufacturer's operations, and they'll say, okay, well, hey, do you have this picking up every Tuesday, every Wednesday, right? But some of the benefits of dealing with a 3PL, if you're a manufacturer or shipper, is you get to focus on your core competency. Okay, so what do I mean? Maybe a manufacturer's core competency isn't in the transportation world. It's making widgets, so they get to focus on that. And then what they do is they can reach out and branch out to some of these third-party logistics companies to take this product and worry about how it's going to get transported to the warehouse or the market or the DC in those areas. Another benefit to a manufacturer or shipper dealing with a third-party logistics company Um, they can take that relationship that they have with the third party logistics company and kind of rely on them to always be there to pick up their freight, to do these types of things. And a third party logistics company, they're vetting the carriers. They're making sure that the carriers are compliant, that they have authority, that they have the contract, that they have the insurance that's needed. But there's some drawbacks to a third party logistics provider as well. And when you think about that, if you're a shipper or manufacturer and you're working with a third party logistics company that doesn't have a very good compliance department or has encountered some opportunities in those realms, there's a lot of exposure. And a lot of times manufacturer shippers aren't fully aware of that exposure. And if they don't have a contract with a third party logistics provider, then they could be exposing themselves to a lot of opportunities. That's why it's key. And I'm speaking from the side of the shipper. As I stated earlier in this, I was with Sara Lee U.S. Foods, right? So we're dealing with a lot of different things. And one of the things that we understood very, very early on into this is we needed a contract, and we needed to make sure that we thoroughly vetted that third party logistics provider. And we wanted to know, what was their compliance like? How did they go into their carriers? How did they score their carriers? How was that? And we got into that type of stuff. So that was a way for us to truly get to know a third party logistics company.
So to clarify, so that it's really clear for the audience, is that when we say 3PL, there's two. I think of it as two levels, and you can correct me. One level is there's a manufacturer, say they're in the city and they got a manufacturing facility, and as they're producing, it comes off the line. Instead of using that same facility, they actually have a warehouse right next door. So they literally just, forklift the pallet. So they got a warehouse for storing the stuff. And then within their company, they have a logistics department who vets out and seeks out third-party companies to help them move their freight to the market, is one level. The second level is that a manufacturer produces the widgets, but they don't want to deal with all that. So they actually get the freight maybe through a broker, but they basically ship the full product, full truckloads to an actual warehouse. And then through that, they still work with the 3PLs, and the warehousing company loads the trucks because they could say, hey, we want 2 pallets of this and 10 pallets of that and 4 pallets of this and 3 pallets of this product. It's all generally full pallets, but mixture of products. But they're shipping, when they're producing product A on the line, they ship a truckload, to that warehouse, then they produce B, and that it's all there. And then the brokers are still involved as far as the pickup and the deliveries, and the manufacturer is still involved with vetting and selecting those parties, and they take care of it. Because the difference, I think, until we get to the fourth and fifth levels, a freight broker cannot take possession of freight, right?
Correct. Correct.
And so am I right in that assumption on the different models, like whether the manufacturer's using their warehousing or they are using an outside warehousing?
Well, so there are some 3PLs so the line between a 3PL and a 4PL can get a little gray, right? Because you've got some 3PL companies out there who will say, okay, we've got our warehousing component, we've got our logistics, and you've got some of that. And you know what? There are 3PL models where they incorporate the warehousing component of that, right? And that gets a little bit closer to a 4PL, but it's not quite a 4PL. But to your point, if you're a shipper or manufacturer and your core competency, or you want to focus on making widgets, selling widgets, and you don't want to deal with or be burdened with some of the movement of that product or the storage of that product, you reach out to a third party provider to do that.
And in this case, at the third party level, before we jump to the fourth, is the manufacturer or the distributor is involved in choosing the 3PL party at this stage.
Absolutely, right? So when you think about that, right, if you're a shipper or manufacturer, you are still the person who's selecting who's going to haul this freight. You're still in that. You're going to say, I'm going with broker A, I'm going with broker B, I'm going with broker C, and you still got some of that involvement, right? Where you're sending that out, and so companies sometimes they don't want to release that full control, or they want to still retain some of that control to where they say who's going to get the freight. but they don't want to deal with, or it's not in their core competency of being able to say, I want to vet all of these carriers, or I want to make sure that listen, there's a reason why there's a massive 3PL market. Okay. And the reason why there's this massive 3PL market is these brokers have the ability to come in, build relationships, good brokers, build relationships with carriers. They understand what it takes to move freight. They understand that these guys out there who are actually transporting this freight, who are strapping down these loads, who are chaining down this freight, who are doing what they need to do. They know it's a tough job, and they build these relationships, and it takes time. It takes infrastructure. It takes resources. It takes time. So that's what a 3PL offers to a shipper. We can do all that. The shippers, they may look at it and from their perspective, this guy's going to give me this rate at this service. He's going to give me this rate at this service. And then they just pick and choose. But everything that goes on behind that, Robert, you and I know there's a lot that goes into logistics, right? And everything behind that, that's what the brokers do. And that's what a 3PL or a brokerage offers to a customer. Hey, listen, we're going to pick up this freight. We're going to transport it to the best possible way that our carriers can, safe, reliable, on time. We're going to give you updates, right, of all of that type of stuff.
Right. And then, and again, just before we get to the 4PL, this is where it's a huge opportunity for brokers and broker agents is to form relationships with the companies that are seeking this kind of thing. That's the bane of our business, is those kind of things. And it takes time and effort. When you're if you're seeing this video and you're a new agent, just know that it takes time and effort and skill, and to understand these supply chain models. And the more that you dive yourself into this and understanding how your role as a third party freight broker agent fits into the supply chain of a company, is going to form you to have long-term business in this industry.
Absolutely. It comes down to relationships, right? And part of that relationship is holding up your end of the deal, your end of the bargain, and bringing something to the table, right? Hey, if you use a 3PL, and if that 3PL is always on time, and here's the thing too, when I say always on time, things happen in the logistics industry. Drivers run out of hours, trucks break down, there's traffic, there's weather events, there's several things that can happen. And when those things happen, the good 3PLs, the good brokers, the good agents, they're on the phone with their customer, and they're advising them ahead of time. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. This is when the product's going to get there, right? Put it in perspective. What I used to do all the time when I would talk to people, I would talk to customers and whatnot. I understand what it's like to have a just-in-time delivery operation. And that you've got 30 different trucks that are coming in from all different places. And you're going to take those trucks, you're going to bring them into your warehouse, you're going to consolidate those trucks and put the product in different trucks, and take it out and send it on to another destination. Now, if just one of those trucks is late, right? If you're expecting that truck to show up at 6 a.m. and all of a sudden it's 6:30 and that truck's not there, do you know the havoc that causes for that dock and that shipping location? And then if they got to get on the phone and they have to call their broker and say, "Where's my truck?" Why are they using you?
Right.
I mean, you have to ask yourself that. What benefit are you at? I'm the shipper. I tendered you this load. We agreed it had to be there at 6 a.m. Now I'm calling you at 6:30, and I've got 4 other trucks that are waiting for this product to get here. And what am I supposed to tell these other carriers? And who's going to pay for that detention? I mean, logistics is a complicated business, right? I would have rather had that call at 5:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning or the day before, that, hey, that truck that you thought was going to get there at 6, it's not going to get there till 7. Do I like it? No, but you know what? Thanks. Now I can rearrange things. I can call these other carriers. I can change different orders. I can get into the weeds and understand what needs to happen to minimize the cost, improve my service to the customer, and get it done, right? And the good 3PLs, those are the ones who are proactive on that.
Well, what I was going to say is what you talked about on the just in times. I have a customer that unfortunately closed several years ago, but they were a fantastic customer for years, and they were a busy facility. Like Fridays tend to be a really busy day, but their warehouse wasn't big. So when they structured their orders, they had to like pile pallets on top of, they had to order it, and they had to literally put pallets down the laneways of the racking. So they stacked it according to if they had a 9 o'clock, if we had a 9, like somebody had
Yep.
5 trucks in the day, and they based it on that. Now if one truck got out, now they're trying to juggle, many pallets. So part of that process, I'd suggest, if you're an agent and you get into these situations, first off, to your point, talk to them about, okay, when you have a busy day where you're doing multiple trucks, are you staging these pallets exactly in the order, or are you just, when the truck arrives, going to the forklift, pulling it down from the second row, and the driver drives it into the truck, goes back, grabs the second? Because that makes a big difference. Because if they're doing that model where they're not actually pulling it until the truck arrives, excuse me, then there is a little bit forgiveness in that regard, as long as you communicate which truck is coming. But if they're pre-staging the night before, if they have a night crew that stages the next day's orders, you have to be on the ball. And part of that is an example. Just yesterday, I have a shipment picking up this week, coming out of Pennsylvania, and I'm talking to carriers. First thing, again, I go back to the carriers I did the load with before. I call them up. We're talking about, yeah, I got a truck that's going to be in PA. Where? This is Wednesday, and we're picking up. He wants to pick up Friday. Okay, where's your truck? Well, it's going to be here. We'll be emptying Friday morning. Well, they're 155 miles away from my shipper. So I started getting into the weeds. I said, it's Wednesday. How many hours left in your driver's logbooks? Where's he planning to sleep? What time are you planning to deliver? Because I said all this because I said, if you're planning to be there, he says, well, 8 o'clock, we're going to deliver. So it's 10 o'clock. 3 hour drive is going to put you at 1. You got to get there by 1. Like 12, my customer really wants the truck there by 12. So I said, can you not check if there's earlier? And I said, well, where's the driver? So we went through this whole detail. I had to tell him, check the driver's ELD. We're supposed to be the transportation professionals for our shippers. You're the dispatcher. You don't even need to call your driver with the ELDs now. You can check his hours, and then you can call him and confirm, because maybe we don't know when the driver is currently in between they're on one load and the dispatch planning the next one. Well, maybe they have an air leak on their glad hands. Maybe they got a broken mud flap that you don't know about. Maybe there's a tail light that they have to stop service and fix. So those things happen. We get that. We can't control the weather, road construction somewhat, because you can look on maps and route accordingly. But weather, if there's an accident on the road and the highway gets closed or something, but those are all the key factors that, exactly to your point. And further, as we saw in the past, well, I guess 5 years, the growth of carrier onboarding software, it's huge now, right?
Yes.
From it, we got our own internal person. There's brokerscarrier.com through to RMIS, the carrier packet 411, RMIS, and then Go Highway. And there's many others on there as well that are out there. But the idea is the importance of properly vetting your carriers, and part and parcel is that when you form that relationship with your manufacturer distributor as their 3PL, you need providers that are going to execute for you, pure and simple. And further, when you have this 3PL model, not only can you do truckload, you can do LTL if you have the skill sets, and you can potentially offer drayage. If they have materials coming in from overseas that are there, you can bring it into their manufacturing process, which ties in. So this model is critical when you can get into a customer and offer multiple modes and a full service package.
Yeah, sure. And just kind of going on a little bit about that, Robert, think about it like this too. You know, there's so much more that a freight agent can offer to a shipper or a customer than just beyond logistics, right? Do you educate your shippers, your manufacturers, on what's going on in the industry, right? You had just talked about all the different vetting models and compliance software and things. Well, why is that? What's the need for that? Well, have you had those conversations with your customer about what's going on with the fraud, with the theft, what's happening in the industry, where it's at today versus where it was? What about some of the new bills that are coming out with the AB5 in California and the impact that that's going to have? Or what's going on with, the situation with the transit through the canals over in the Suez Canal and in Panama with the drought, right? But having those conversations with your customer and educating them, you instead of looking at yourself as I'm a freight agent, or you almost have to look at yourself, and you should look at yourself as I'm a supply chain consultant to my customer,
Exactly.
right? Because truly, and that's where you can set yourself apart. You can truly bring more to the table, an agent can, than just, hey, I'm going to give you, a reliable truck at a good price. I'm going to help bring you through this? And how do you warehouse it? To your point, how are you staging it? How does it get shipped out? Is this the right routing? Have you thought about consolidating some of this freight and putting it on different days? I think a lot of times you get some of these inexperienced or inexperienced freight brokers or agents who haven't been around long enough. And they're just so excited to get the business. Great, thanks, I got it. And they're looking for a truck and to get it on. But that's the start of issues and opportunities, right? Because beyond that, like one of the things that I used to do is I would look at the delivery location, and if there was going to be delays or something like that, and I'm on the phone with the truck driver. Hey, you know what? There's a Subway shop right around the corner here. Let's, if there's some delays, you can go up there and get your sandwich, get it done. I'm going to work with them. We'll get you some detention, and you can kind of talk through that, because that conversation with the customer, you could and should have that same conversation with the carrier. Right. I mean, I've had conversations, relationships with carriers where, I knew them. I knew their family members. I knew what they liked, where they went. Sometimes I would send them gift cards. Hey, here's what's going on. You can do these types of things because, we exist together, right? We exist together with the shipper, with the broker, and with the carrier. It's a relationship.
Well, the more that you grow yourself with your at the beginning, you're at that foundation level with your customer, and then as it goes on, you gain level and you get to that the goal is the alliance level where there's a shared risk. And
Yeah.
because of your forward-thinking, like when you talk about, when I get an order from a customer, a PO, I don't just dispatch it to the truck right away. I'm looking at my customer saying, okay, what's the procedures for the loading? How much time is that going to take? And before I do anything, I call the consignees, because often I get situations where I'm delivering to a job site or something. I get the phone number for someone, and that is the purchase order person in the office. Well, I'm not on site. Okay, well, who's the contact? Then I find out who the contact is. Well, I phone that actually, the day you're going to deliver, I'm not going to be there, so you have to call this person. And then finding out the procedures and asking what's going on, like whether it's a warehouse or delivery to the job site. And sometimes, if your manufacturer is quite large, where they have lots of layers within their company, and they got buyers and salespeople and logistics departments, sometimes their processes it's a process to get an order, it gets pushed out, and it goes. And then when you talk to the consignee and you said, yeah, we're going to deliver on Wednesday. Well, we needed this Tuesday. Oh, well, they didn't know that. So you bring that back to the customer, and the sales rep didn't realize this, and someone else, and all of a sudden you turn that, what was a reasonable cost order, they say, well, can you get a team on this? See, you averted a whole bunch of issues from you helped prevent your customers and customer from being disappointed by communicating
Oh,
and
yeah.
have a conversation. And just the other day, I had a shipment coming out of Calgary, just a local one to another town. But I saw that the weather was changing in Calgary because we had a snowstorm coming, and they had the site we're delivering to is a mall, and they had Zoom booms arranged for that day, and we were going to go the more economical. But my economical LTL says we can't deliver till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and my fear was with the snow coming, they may not even deliver. They might hold the truck back because they do milk run to get there. So I
Sure.
phoned my customer and I said to them, and I went back to the carrier that had higher price, and I explained to them the situation. Well, guess what? They found another shipment to match up to help bring the price down. Talked to my customer, said, hey, with the storm coming, my fear is that I might be calling you that we're not going to be delivering. So I'd rather go this route, which is more direct. It was a little bit more money, but they understood it and they didn't want to disappoint their customer. They said, go for it. And, so those things happen. You have to be on the ball and you have to be creative with your business, and understanding your customers, and not just your customer, but your customers and customers. And the more that you have this, and utilizing your TMSs to put notes and procedures, makes it so you're not reinventing the wheel every time. And it's helped me huge in my business.
Oh yeah, no, I would agree. And part of what you had just talked about there, relies on the technology component, right? So you got some of these smaller 3PLs, they may not have some of that technology where you can go in and put those notes. And I mean, it sounds very easy for us because we're used to it. But if you're that one or two person freight brokerage, and you're operating out of your house or your basement, and you're running on some bottom line software, you may not have some of those automations, and that's kind of hard to do. And you got to work around that with I don't know, Excel or Word or whatnot. But some of the advantages we have, dealing with top of the line software and putting that information in, and we can have prompts that help us and tell us, and if it goes into this shipping location, these are the details for this shipping location and this delivery location, specific information, based on a location standpoint.
Well, and my goal as a agent is two-part. One is I want to represent our company, SPI, so I don't want to burn bridges for another agent's experience. If I had a bad experience with a carrier, I don't want to, if we have to involve management, we do, but I don't want to burn just because I had one bad experience with the carrier doesn't mean it's going to be the same way for all. But we've also had bad carriers consistently, and we know that. So we have checks and balances within our company to know which carriers we can and cannot use. And if there's a reason we cannot use it, there's notes, and we know, and I respect those decisions, because if I see your name on there, that's pretty serious. And I've seen a few with your name on there. And when I see that, I don't even question to call head office, to beg and ask for forgiveness. They'll use this carrier. No, I'll find someone else, because I see that's there. And there's a reason when your name is on there, it's been well involved. So that's part of it. But the main part that I look at as an agent that I can pass along to the audience is, if you're an agent, a freight broker agent, book the loads and do all your research so that you want the experience to be so easy with your customer and easy for the carrier. So easy for the carrier. Think about the carrier. When they give you the address, sometimes the address they give you is not the shipping entrance. That's actually the office entrance. The truck entrance is on the side of the building. You need to figure that out. So when you make it so easy for the driver, and then you make it so easy for the consignee and the shipper, and everyone knows, guess what? If you're calling that consignee every time, hey, it's Rob, we have another delivery coming. Great. Next time you call, may not happen right away. 10, 15 loads later. Hey, Rob, we've been struggling with some lanes. Boy, I really like your communication. Would you be interested in quoting our freight? It's happened more times than you think. And just by consistency over time. But when you make it so easy, you don't, when the carrier, I have carriers that would rather work with me. They're not going to backdoor me, because there's always that fear that the carrier will say, backdoor you, try to steal your customer, provide information to another broker. There's always that risk in this business. But when you do it so well, I've had carriers call me and say, yeah, they just want to book it with me. They don't want to book with anyone else or things like that. There's, the market is competitive, but I know that when you do it well, carriers appreciate that, shippers appreciate that, and you maintain a good relationship with all parties involved.
Oh, sure. No, you're exactly right. And just kind of echoing some of the comments that you had just spoke about, once you get that load from your customer, right? Another couple seconds, pick up the phone, like you said, call the receiver. Is there anything special I need to know about this? I've got a truck coming in here tomorrow. Where should they go? Who should they look for? Is there a dock name? And here's that's twofold. One, because you're getting all that information, and then when you call that carrier and you're booking that freight, okay, hey, the guy you're going to talk to is Ed. You're going to go for a blue door on the side. You're going to do these all the things. So you're helping that driver. You're letting them know that, one, you care. You're making his life or her life easier. They're getting it done, right? And you're building that rapport with that driver. Okay. Wow, this guy went through all these problems. And hey, if you have any questions, give me a call. And here's another question that a lot of agents or brokers probably don't ask the carrier, and they should. After a carrier gets loaded, hey, did they treat you well? Right? When they load, did they treat you well? How was that shipper? What was that like? Okay. And then at the delivery point, did they unload you good? Any problems? How was that experience? Right? It's just those small things to let the carrier know that you care, that they matter, right? Because that's a hard job. That is a very hard job. And if they're out there and they're busting their tail to get this freight done and doing a good job, and if there's something that's not right, maybe the carrier says, well, hey, you know what, the utilities were down when I was there. So then when you have that conversation with your customer later on, hey, did they ever get that fixed? Well, how do you know that, Robert? Oh, come on. I talk to the drivers. They tell me. And you're building that rapport. You're getting it going. But I said it was twofold. The other component of that too, though, Robert, is as you're talking to that receiver and you're getting all the instructions and the information for the receiving facility, you're gonna set yourself apart, or an agent is going to set themselves apart. Well, man, you're asking a lot of questions. You know this. Well, yeah, and you're building that rapport with them. Because listen, every truck that comes in delivering product is at least another truckload of product coming back out. right? So you can secure that. And then think about that. If you can secure that business, then that carrier who's maybe delivering a load for you today, if they deliver that today, it takes 3 or 4 days for them to process it. Another load comes in, you can get them on a load going out. And then you're talking continuous runs. And if you can get those continuous runs going, it makes it that much easier for you, for the carrier, and your customer.
And I make an effort actually at the end of all loads, after they've delivered. I always say thanks you to the
Yes.
dispatch team, but I say thank your driver, please. Please thank your
Yep.
driver for a great job. I try to make that effort there, especially if I know the driver's did a good job.
Mhm.
Because I recently had a situation where a customer called and they were disappointed with the driver. There was a couple of things happened that they thought, geez, but guess what? Despite that situation, the driver had the wherewithal. It was a situation where it was a power only and there was a problem. And I called my customers like, oh, see what I mean? They thought it was the driver's fault, but no, it was an issue with the trailer, and they adverted. That driver saved, because my customer originally said, no, I don't want to see that carrier again. And, but now I'm going to be able to use them again because that carrier did do a good job at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So frustrating
Yeah.
in one aspect. But the unfortunate part is that this industry, there are a lot of new drivers, and unfortunately, it takes time to hone that craft of backing and turning in tight corners and things of that nature. That's on the carriers, to train the drivers, which is the time and effort factor. And there's so many of the models because there's a lot of owner operators versus the company drivers, and I think that's a factor in training because sometimes people rush through the training process to get to that owner operator level. But regardless, at the end of the day, it's the drivers that are the sacrifice. They're the ones that are on there for 4 or 5 days if it's a long run, and they're away from their families, missing
Yeah.
activities and events. So all we can say is, if you see a driver, be courteous to them on the roads, leave space. When I drive on the highways, the simple rule I can tell everyone is, if you've never been a class 1 driver, which I have not, but my father was, is when I drive behind one, if I can't see the driver's mirror, I'm too
He can't
close.
see you. Yep.
Exactly. That's
That's
my
right.
model. And then I tell my kids, when there's a semi truck, like, give them the room, right? Pay attention to them. But yeah, you don't want to you don't want to be too close to them. Just give them the space. But if you see a driver out there ever walking, just thank them, because
Mhm.
they're the people bringing the goods to you. Whether it's, you may not see it, they may have brought some product that went to one warehouse that they then manufactured something that ended up at your door. But a driver is involved in all aspects of our life somehow, some way, whether it's ocean freight coming in with drayage, all the way to a courier package with FedEx
Mhm.
getting delivered. There's transportation is a critical part of our life because we live and breathe stuff, and well, something's got to get shipped somehow, some way.
You're right. And we
So
think about it, Robert, everything that we're eating, thinking, or everything that we're eating, seeing, wearing, whatever, buying, all came on a truck somewhere in the process.
exactly. So
That's
we're on
okay.
to the fourth. So I'll let you carry on with the fourth and then the fifth level.
Yeah, sure. So four PL, when you think about a 4PL, think long-term contract. Okay. A 4PL is a company that's going to come in. Typically, a 4PL is a company that is uniquely geared, situated to integrate with a customer. They're dealing with, you know, the product that's coming in that's going to get manufactured, the product that's going out that they manufactured, the warehousing component of it, the inventory. They're dealing with several of the services for that customer. They are truly the supply chain consultants that I had referenced earlier in this, right? They are the people who are saying, okay, we are selecting the transportation providers. We're selecting these brokers, these carriers. These are the people who are going to haul it. They're offering that one point of contact for the customer. A lot of times they are the individuals who are interfacing alongside with maybe a customer representative, maybe not, with some of the vendors, right? They're the people who are dealing with the freight payment, the freight audit. They're dealing with the claims. They're dealing with the warehousing. They're dealing with how they're going to create the IT solution for the customer. They are the person where the customer says, okay, I am going to truly focus on my core competency or my aspect of the business that I'm good at. And then you as in the 4PL, you handle the entire supply chain process, right? And that deals with the planning of the production, the planning of the delivery of the goods, the manufacture of the goods that's going to go out. Not the manufacturing process, but how it gets stored, how it gets packaged, in some cases, some of those things. So 4PL is the company from a freight perspective. Think about it like this: they're going to be running the transportation bids, right? So you have a company who makes widgets, and they say, okay, hey, I've got these widgets, and I've got all these customers, and I've got these DCs. So then that 4PL says, okay, great. Based up, and they do the analytics. They get into the data, they get into the weeds. Okay, based on these shipping patterns, we need to have this many product go from the manufacturer to the DC to the customer in these areas. Maybe they'll recommend to the customer, you need to either build or rent a DC in this particular area to better service your customer. They'll create the bid packages. They'll send out the bids. And that's not uncommon with what you see with Uber right now, right? You got Uber
Right.
Freight, and they just bought Transplace, and what they're doing is they're running these bids for all these other customers and whatnot. They're becoming a 4PL, or they are a 4PL for a lot of their
I've used
customers.
Transplace for a customer that was, that's how it worked, is you had to be part of Transplace, and you did your bids on through the Transplace system, and then you had to track and do everything through that. And I think that this 4PL model, what it does is, a manufacturer may have their own supply chain, but sometimes what it can do is, if they're not that big of a company,
Mhm.
that they're big enough to warrant all this, a 4PL can help, because a 4PL can be for many different companies. Sometimes if they're big enough, they'll be exclusive to one company
Oh,
as a
sure.
service point, but they could also be multiple. So they could service multiple customers because of the size of the warehouse and the scaling. So they could have someone who doesn't pump out, say, truckloads, and you're producing something, but they don't really have kind of, maybe you're literally producing, you're a small company startup, and you're producing something in your garage. You got your whole garage set up to produce it. You're boxing it up. And as you box up a pallet or two, you get it brought to this 4PL warehouse. They take care of all the rest of it for you. You tell them when there's an order, and they take care of it from there. That's one idea I think of. And then the second idea I think, and then I'll let you can correct me, but one is for the small startups, utilizing the power of a 4PL to help create the distribution to the marketplace. The second one is, I'll keep it simple. You have a company in Houston, and they're shipping all around. They realize, we have a lot of orders up in the Northeast, and shipping all the way up there all the time can be costly, or they're not getting full truckloads all the time. So maybe they don't want to deal with all that. So what they can use is a 4PL based in Chicago or Ohio. It's a way for them to branch their business without having to invest in a full operation. So they can ship the product to a warehouse there, and as orders are necessary, the 4PL takes care of, and they can look after a region. So I'm not sure if that's the right idea, but just to give some sense for the audience to understand, is that would that be accurate?
Yeah, it would. Okay, so to your point, when you're a small business, small operation, you use the garage model, right? Um, so yeah, what you can do is you can have a small business who manufactures a product, and they say, okay, I have a product. Well, the 4PL will come pick it up and take it and do it for. They'll handle all of that, right? And it's a way for them to scale their business to grow. It allows them to focus on what they need to without having to get involved or try to learn these different skill sets to take their product to the market. Okay. But, on a much larger scale, right? It's think about a company, multi-million, billion-dollar company. And what that is they can say, all right, I can save money by not having to onboard several people, deal with the compliance, deal with the insurance, deal with the claims, all of those types of things. So what they can do is they can focus on manufacturing or importing of a product. If they're manufacturing overseas, they're importing it, and they can handle that transaction. For example, I work with a company, and there was a 4PL involved where the 4PL created a load control center. Okay. So this company had product, and they were manufacturing a product. And what they did is they hired a 4PL to basically come on site. The employees were employees of the 4PL. The software solution that they had was a solution from the 4PL. And And what would happen is they would say, I've got this product done and I've got an order for my customer. They would feed it over to the ERP system. And from there, they would handle everything. Now, the benefits to that large company is they were able to reduce costs, look at a collapsed financial statement saying, okay, here's my cost for the 4PL, and then here's my variable costs for anything
Right.
where it went to a spot market or if they had to buy additional DC space somewhere else, right? And then, through that collaboration, the 4PL was able to say, all right, let's do quarterly business reviews. And then they can look at the quarterly business review and really dive into the details. And they can do all the data, all the analytics, all the slicing and dicing and say, okay, hey, here's how we performed. Here's how notice I said we, not you, customer, here's how we performed last quarter. And then here's the areas of opportunities where we believe that we can improve, right? Because a 4PL should be taking a look at all ends of the supply chain and saying, okay, let's try to work on this a little bit better. And I'm touching a little bit on a 5PL solution when I say that, right?
Yeah.
But a 4PL should be able to handle all areas of the supply chain for a customer.
Well, and also at a deeper level is if they're seeing claims and the product maybe it's due to the packaging, well, they're going to bring that back and have to tweak it up. And also the benefit is with the 4PL is they can take the orders, and depending on how many orders are coming in and where, they could then be that creative on saying, hey, we have like 4 pals here, 3 pals here, 4 pals here, and they're all going to this one state. So what we're going to do is we're going to order that as almost like a truckload, and we have a partner warehouse there. We're going to drop it at, and then we're going to assign those as, then they go to branch out to 3 different markets. So you have to decide which is the most effective, but that's what the 4PL is doing for that manufacturer. And that's where I guess the whole thing I want to bring in is how a freight broker agent fits into this model. Well, every time a truck has to get moved, if you have a relationship with the 4PL, because the 4PL is they're not a brokerage, they're a logistics, they're different. They may have they may have a brokerage component to them. They may have a brokerage division, and they may even have a freight forwarding division as part of that, because they can import goods as well or export goods. But they're set up a little different than a traditional broker that might be working from their home. They have assets, they have warehousing, they may even have a shunt truck to move trailers in and out of docks, right? They may have a class 1 driver or 2 on board, and then they got forklifts, they've got warehousing, they've got, like you said, scanning in systems. Like they're a full on operation, and that saves a manufacturer time. But as a broker agent, your opportunity is to source those out and build relationships and seeing, can your services, it's more so that your services, can they keep up with the 4PL's requirements?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, right. So focusing a little bit on what you were talking about, how the agent broker model fits into that 4PL. If you've got a really good agent who is thinking at a 4PL level, right? So they know already, okay, the 4PL that I'm dealing with, they're going to need this information, they're going to need this, they're going to need this from the customer, and they can communicate that to the customer, right? So that agent is the middleman, can be the effective middleman between a 4PL and a customer. Absolutely.
And I guess to a degree, if there's enough volume there, the 3PL party can assist the 4PL if it became an RFQ. If they wanted some contract business in there, if you have a deep enough relationship where you're not just bidding on the freight, but they're actually asking you to help go to the marketplace, source us some rates, come back to us. What can you offer us in which lanes? And you can be a strong consultant in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another thing, Robert. I've worked with some businesses where I'm going to say the 3PL operated as a 4PL light, right? So now, okay, and I'm not coining a new term, but what that is that 3PL, because they've got such a good relationship with the customer. Maybe the customer isn't a large scope, large scale, maybe they are, but they say, hey, let me help you take a look at your transportation spend. Where are you spending? Do you have an RFP process, right? If you don't have an RFP process, let me help you walk through this process and build it for you, right? Do you have a process for warehousing? No. Well, let me start trying to work with some warehousing partners and go through that process. I've even seen it where a 3PL had brought in the freight payment functions for a customer, right? So there's no definitive um, end to a 3PL. They can do multiple things. They can do this component or that component. They can do a few different things. It doesn't have to just be moving freight.
So I've jumped to the fifth 5PL level because I think you've already touched on it, but you can just really identify what brings it to. And I have one more screen that after this, I'll just kind of show the whole summary of it all. But I guess just a quick touch, because I don't want to take too much of your time here, is as we've been on for a bit here now, it's been awesome. The information you've been providing is, woof. If any broker agent watches this, have a pen and paper, and you're going to learn something. If you take any of these gold nuggets that Mark is sharing with us and apply that to your building your book of business, you will have a long, successful career in the logistics industry. So let's just touch quickly on what transitions from a 4PL to the 5PL.
Okay, so I'm going to say one word: optimization, right? So if you're a 5PL, you're focused on the optimization of the supply chain. You're looking at the automation, the integration. How can you take this from a technology standpoint from what a 4PL does? Because we already spoke about a 4PL and everything that it does. So then what you do is you take this 5PL and you encapsulate all of that. And then a 5PL looks at it and says, okay, how do we optimize this supply chain? And when I say optimization, it's not solely technology. It could be that, you know what, maybe you need to take a look at the vendors that are part of this, and you can streamline some of those vendors, right? One of the things that come to mind for me when I'm looking at it from a 5PL perspective, a lot of times I'll get into it and a company has 17 vendors for the same function. And I understand the need or the desire to never be in a situation where you don't have enough capacity or enough vendors. But, one of the rules that I live by, when I'm looking at a 5PL perspective for capacity, 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is done. So I'm always looking for 3 different vendors for any particular type of service, right? And then with those 3 vendors, what you do is you have to analyze this, and you have to say, okay, these 3 vendors out of my vendor pool, I believe that they are the best, the most viable, the better service. Notice I didn't say cost, right? They provide this, because more often than not, if you're looking for the lowest cost provider, you're probably going to get that type of service as well. Okay. So, a lot of times I'll go to a customer and I'll say, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to be your lowest cost option. I'm not shooting for that, but I'm also not going to be your highest. Right. So let's take a look at that. So 5PL optimization, and you've got to get into the weeds. You got to get into the data. You're taking this customer's business from the beginning to the end, and then you're giving them all of that information, and you're a partner. You're neutral. You're looking at it from a neutral perspective. Listen, I really would love to give it to vendor C, but you know what? If their analytics and where they're at doesn't match, then you know what? We got to go to vendor B. I'm putting different things out there.
And go ahead.
So from a 5PL perspective, it is the overall package, right? You have to look at it from that. It's the entire supply chain.
Well, and I was going to say one thing I just highlighted here is when you talk about optimization, it comes into the inventory, the IT solutions, as well as the invoicing, because it gets into the
Sure.
days to pay, all of that aspect of it as well. But what I was going to say is, as a broker agent, and you want to get connected to 3PLs, particularly 4PLs and 5PLs, because if you get to a 5PL level and you have relationships, you can really get yourself some good business. But just know, when you want to enter the 4PL and the 5PL world, before you dive into that, if you're a broker agent for a brokerage, first question to ask yourself is, does your software, the TMS software you have EDI capabilities? Because if it doesn't, that can be a showstopper. And if it doesn't, that's okay, but you have to talk to your brokerage. Are they prepared to spend the money? Because EDI integration with TMSs comes at a cost, a significant cost. In fact, like it's one thing to get a $100 a month TMS. There's out there. You can get a $50 to $100 TMS is out there, but a lot of those may or may not, but you have to add on. It might be an add-on module, but you just need to ensure, because part of the key with some of these is that you need that EDI, which is electronic data interface, which allows the 4PL to issue tenders directly to your system that you just click. They don't call you. The tender's there. You click to accept, and then you have to execute. It's a process that happens, but you have to have that technology, and then you need to understand what other technologies they want from tracking updates and their expectations, so that the main thing is that entering that relationship, part of it is a relationship. That's step one. Step two is, unfortunately, a big component will be the technology, and that can be the difference between how much business you get with them or not.
Robert, I want to expand a little bit on that whole technology component. Yeah, EDI is absolutely essential. Your TMS has to be able to be EDI compliant if you're going to deal with some of these big shippers, right? Too, but there's an additional component to that too. I go and I visit agents. I go and visit brokers. I've done some of this stuff in my career, and I've seen I'll speak specifically for SPI. We have the ability and technology. Our IT team in the infrastructure world, they'll go in, and let's say an agent is receiving orders in an email. The customer doesn't have EDI capabilities. They're sending this stuff over in an email. So we have the ability to take that information, parse it out, and build a load in our TMS, and then take that and then offer that to primary core carriers within our network, where the carriers can take a look at it, place their bids, look at the tenderings type stuff that comes in. That technology component, I can't speak highly enough to how important that is. And it's a significant competitive advantage when you're talking to a customer and you can offer them some of this technology, right? So when you go to a 4PL or 5PL level, maybe they're getting their information from a materials provider, and it's in an email, and they don't have an EDI capability. Well, guess what? You can do an API. You can do a webhook. You can parse emails. You can do EDI. There's so many different variables that you can do when you have the technology and the wherewithal to get it done.
Well, and part of that is the technology allows you as a broker agent to grow or not grow.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you have all these systems in place and you're putting information in there, that you have the notes and the procedures for each shipper, consignee, customer, because as a broker agent, I can add additional team members. We have many agent offices with 4, 5, 6 people working in a single office. We have many single agent like myself. I'm one, and I got a freight auditor because I do a lot of LTL, so I have a freight auditor as well. But a lot of agents, we have just one person, but we have many with 2 to 6 to 8 people, agent offices around US and Canada. So having the technology there is key. And what that, further to Mark's point, as a broker, when you typically the role is you just want to get that first load, and then you're hoping for the second and the third. As you build the relationship, you gain knowledge about the shipper, customer builds trust with you. What that does then is, over time, as you see their business, you work with them for say a year and you see trends, you can then slowly consult and educate them, present to them, because there's still there's some shippers that are super high tech. I mean, there's facilities in the United States where drivers don't even see anyone. They just check in. It's all computerized. You just enter codes. It prints out the BOLs automatically and stuff like that. There's a lot of that. But then there's still the old school where they're literally handwriting a BOL. So we can help as a freight broker agent. We can help shippers get a bit more technological without a lot of cost in their end, and just show them some opportunities to help, again, even if they're not big, but to optimize their operation. So
right, and it all comes down to that communication, picking up the phone, and so, hey, how do you get your orders? How does this work? And having those conversations. Another thing that I can't stress enough, if a agent has the opportunity to go out and visit the customer, and it's not just, hey, let's go out and hit some golf balls, or hey, let's just go to lunch. It's more of, is there any way I can come in and maybe shadow your team a little bit? Right. You can learn a lot just by doing that.
And well, when you do that, so first off, typically in my experience is that you have a meeting in the office where you get to meet some of the people, but
Sure.
more so is when you ask if you can get a tour of the warehouse. Because
Yeah.
getting a tour of the warehouse, talking to the shipping person who's actually loading the trucks or the manager of the saying, asking them, what would you like to see? What's been the pain in the past with when carriers arrive, or what are your procedures here? Looking at their product, because let's say you see the product and you're like, the boxes overhang, all the boxes are overhanging the pallet footprints, and then you ask them, do you guys get a lot of claims? Actually, we do.
Hmm.
Well, maybe you should consider a different pallets, like simple
Right.
things like that. But also being aware of their different products. Like when I go to a location, I'm always there with my tape measure because I want to measure the pallets and see where they're at. Take a picture of the pallets, build that knowledge so that you're, or whatever the product that you're shipping, and be aware of it and understand. And again, back to our beginning, understanding when they're busy, do they pre-stage truckloads? They have to pull it from the the fourth level of their scaffolding of the pallets, that they have to bring it down and they pre-stage the night before all the trucks that are coming in, or do they do it at the time? Because that makes it, just like you said, if a truck is running behind and they had an employee spend an hour pulling pallets, only to find out that that truck's not coming. Now what are they going to do?
Hmm.
Waste their time, cost them money, and so forth.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, absolutely. I
so
totally agree.
wow, you really spoiled us with your time and knowledge.
I don't
um,
know about that, but
well, I can't thank you enough for this. I think hopefully there's some huge value here. I don't want to. I think we should close this out here. But I just, in closing, what any other closing remarks you got on this kind of big topic? It's a very big topic we addressed in a short period
it,
of time, but
yeah, sure, absolutely. So, I want to kind of hone in on the 3PL component of it, right? And thing that I would really hone in on that is there are no set definitions for what a 3PL can only do. So as agents, brokers are working with their customers, I wouldn't I wouldn't shy away from offering additional services if you have the ability or the capabilities to do that, right? Communicate, talk to your carriers, talk to your customers, and realize that we're all in this together.
exactly. And again, for small owner operators, how you can also, because I know there's a lot of owner operators that see it, if you're not using a TMS, even if you're just a one truck carrier, there's some affordable options out there where you're able to, like, I've had a few carriers that I finally convinced, took a long time, but once they did it, they're like, wow, we're so happy we did it. Because I had carriers that, they would deliver between Canada, US. They'd wait for the drivers to bring all the BOLs in. Like it would be 2 weeks after delivery before we'd even get the PODs. And then another week, because almost 3 weeks before the invoice and POD was issued, which means they're not getting paid for an additional, period of time. And where I'm sharing with, I keep telling them, you know what, I had a load delivered this morning. I already got the POD and invoice from the carrier. They're like,
Mhm.
wow. So that's because of, not because of well, it's partly the people, but it's more so the technology that the drivers had an app or a system that they can take a snapshot of the POD, mark it as delivered, and it gets uploaded into their systems, and then gets uploaded into ours, and so forth. So there's a lot of great things that can happen that you may think that you're small, but you don't have to be small in terms of your ability to execute the market, because that's just going to bring consistency. And again, we at SPI, I mean, one of the things that SPI really promotes is to avoid the one and done carriers. We want long-term relationship carriers. And I think majority of our agents are not posting a lot on load boards. We're posting internally, and a lot of our freight moves because of we're going with our regular carriers. And so we still have freight on, because I know a lot of people in the YouTube community might say, well, we don't see a lot of your freight. That's because we move a lot with our internally. So unfortunately, it is a bit harder for a new carrier to just come out there and connect into our network, so to speak. But you have to just keep reaching out to us and figuring out. But we have to get set up. There's a whole process there of getting set up, figuring out the lanes. But we have a lot of great technology that's happening to help make that awareness. But we do have, once you connect with us and get set up, we have tools that can help you show the loads that we do have available. And then it's a slow process at the beginning, but once you get in, you get in the groove.
Yep, I would concur. Absolutely.
So excellent. Well, again, thank you so much, Mark. I will,
Thank you, Robert.
with that, we'll say again, thanks so much. And we'll hopefully get some feedback, anyone, then put some comments if you like, how your experience is with 3PLs, 4PLs. And if there's anything you want to share, put it in the comments, and hopefully you share this video out. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Goodbye.